And we're back. We're live. We're back.
Live. We're here. We're ready.
We are so ready. And you know what? We're bringing the fun back to Unmute Yourself, the podcast.
That's right. And we have a lot to say, but I just, as a get ready, folks, because we're going to unlabel another label.
All right, Beth's jumping right in. Let's just do it. So what are we labeling and unlabeling? What are we unlabeling that's become a label that, as you know, we don't like very much?
That's right. So the label, I've been on this for a while. Tall poppy syndrome. And that's not what we're going to call it, is it? We're changing it up.
No, correct. Because is it a syndrome? Is it a medical condition?
No.
Are we catastrophizing it? Well, let me ask you this. If you had to use one word to describe tall poppy syndrome, how would you describe it? It is a feeling.
It's a feeling.
It's a feeling. Yep. So can we give him a little bit of history here? Podsters? Yeah. All right. So Beth, several weeks ago, she's always trending. She said, "Hey, what do you think about talking about tall poppy syndrome?" I checked it out. I'm a little wary of anything called a syndrome, a phenomenon, all the pretty labels that we put on things like we talked about a couple weeks ago. So then I kept seeing it pop up and pop up and pop up. Not that I think it brings up an important topic, but it kept coming up. And we said, we got to get ahead of this so that our podsters don't go down the rabbit hole and start calling this thing a syndrome. So here we are talking about tall poppy syndrome. So Beth, if you had to provide a definition, because I bet a lot of people haven't heard of it, how'd you describe it?
And it's interesting because I thought initially when I started to read about it, I thought it originated in Australia and New Zealand. And so it's kind of a popular thing over there, not popular, but common. And I was surprised by that. Like, I've never been to that part of the world, but I always think of them as being kind of laid back and fun and kangaroos and stuff. I was kind of surprised to hear about it, but I guess they like to keep their people, humble and modest. But today I read that it actually goes back to the Greeks and the Romans, to those civilizations, as in, oh, Caesar has too much power, let's kill him. So a good definition of tall poppy syndrome is when someone is attacked or resented or criticized for their success, which devalues the achievement of someone, suggesting that they don't deserve the attention.
Okay. So, right. So would you agree with the statement that it's about people who are standing out, therefore they're a tall poppy? Poppies are supposed to grow together and all be the same height. So if you're a tall poppy, you are standing out. So this is people who stand out being cut down, ridiculed, or sabotaged because they are standing out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the kind of complicated twist here is that the syndrome isn't just one person, right? Like the feeling isn't necessarily the person who's having the top of the head of their poppy cut off. It's the person who's projecting onto them.
Right. It's the action of you or me or someone cutting down the tall poppy because you think it's too tall and it's taking up all the sun.
Right. Whereas you can have imposter experience all on your own.
Correct.
Tall poppy syndrome requires two people at least.
Excellent point. And podsters, I have to pause. Did you see what Beth did there? Imposter experience, imposter feeling, not a syndrome. So, with tall poppy, you can't say it's a tall poppy feeling. However, my layman's description is it's jealousy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's jealousy of someone else's success, not envy, because there's a difference between jealousy and envy. And we've talked about that before. I guess, Beth and I talked about this because, so there's a couple things that I don't love about the whole concept. My issue is that it's not a syndrome. It's a common feeling that many people experience. Some people don't. The other thing that really bothers me and triggers me about this is the whole women cutting down women or people cutting people down. There's an expression that was made famous by Madeleine Albright. There's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And, Tall Poppy isn't necessarily just about women, but it's becoming that way. I don't know if you noticed that too. Everybody talking about it is women. However, it started with men talking about it and women. So anyway, the sheer act of saying there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women is women not supporting other women.
Right.
So let's stop with that and instead call the behavior what it is. So in the women cutting down other women, it's irrelevant. So I say this, I'm very activated about this, obviously. I say this because it's been around a long time and we need to stop with this, with the women cutting down other women, because it's perpetuating the issue. And you want to know what the men are doing? First of all, male or female, people cut down other people. That's just a fact of life. But the men are sitting back watching the women pit each other against each other and say things like there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. It simply is. Sometimes it's a male, sometimes it's a female. I will end my rant and just ask people to move away from that quote, because it's from the dinosaur ages and we need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Beth? I know I went on a little rant there.
Read something that kind of hit me. I can't remember what it is now, but I did write this down. I read a couple of things today. It said, these attitudes reflect attention. Tension, not one word, attention. They reflect tension between achievement, authority, and equality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I know what it was. You mentioned, it's definitely about comparison, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just feel like if you're comparing yourself to other people, that means you're either not confident or you're insecure about what's happening for you. Maybe work isn't going well. And the first thing that maybe we're pulled to do is to look at somebody else and say, well, that person has this position and they shouldn't be there. or that person is charging that much money and they don't deserve that. And, how do we stop that? Because I feel like that's, an irrational response that everybody's felt at some point. But how do you stop acting on that feeling? I mean, I think there are feelings that are going to come no matter what. It's just going, oh, this is a stupid feeling and I need to do something about it.
Yeah, I love that, because a long time ago, somebody said to me, or I read a meme somewhere, I don't remember. And I think we've said it here, pay attention to what you resent or what triggers you or what envy or who you envy. So for example, if there's someone in my feed on social media and I'm like, here they are again talking about how great they are at this, and this, right? Well, that's a sign about something. So clearly I'm either envious or I want what they have, or I'm mad at myself for not doing that or not doing it first, or whatever the case may be. So when people cut down other people because of their success, which is really hard for me to relate to because I do not do that. I don't. I might have years ago. I don't think I ever did. Like, there's enough to go around for everybody. There is. I was never a competitive salesperson. I mean, I was in that I always wanted to get the sale. But like, I remember I was at a networking event once and this woman sat down. I had brought this client to this networking event and one of my competitors sat down right next to us. And I just kind of laughed and I'm like, you know what? There's enough to go around for everybody. If you want to sit here, that's fine. Like, it's just never been in my DNA. So for me, I think it might also be about the person who is being attacked.
Yes.
Like, you can't be the tall poppy. You can't reach for the sun without some level of expectation that haters are going to hate. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you can't not reach for you can, but when you stop reaching for the sun because haters are going to hate and you're afraid to put yourself out there, which I totally understand, then you're holding yourself back.
Right.
And that's a shame.
Right.
I don't think I answered your question.
No, but I think there's a lot of things here, right? That they just keep opening and evolving, because this is seriously a two-sided thing, because there has to be two situations involved, right? Somebody's got to be the poppy and somebody's got to have the hedge clippers. Right?
Well, so let me ask you this. Okay. So the theory is that poppies should grow together and all be the same size. Do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
Well, I think for poppies themselves, I mean, literally, yes, but that's just not how real life works.
Do you think they should?
No.
Right. Right. So the whole premise of that, the whole premise of this feeling or experience is that everybody should grow equally. No, that's not how,
No.
A, that's not how the world works. And B, that's not how things happen.
Right.
Then everybody's complacent.
Yes. Right. But I feel like, and I have seen this in many different circles, if you're the person who is the envious one of a tall poppy that you sometimes have to ask yourself, is it really what I want? What they have, is it really what I want? Or am I looking at it and seeing their success or their happiness or whatever? Not that it's perfect to be a tall poppy. It just can look that way, I think, to other people. But do you really want that? Because there's got to be compromises. There's got to be sacrifices. And are you willing to make those? Be in the person's position.
This is wild because I just had this conversation last week with my business coach. And it went like this. You're not going to believe this. Hopefully you'll think it's funny. So I have a sizzle reel coming out. This is a 90-second speaker video that's professionally done. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of investment, and it's really table stakes for the professional speaking circuit. Like you can't be with any speaker bureau without a sizzle reel. And I wanted to wait until I had a really, really good one. Anyway, was supposed to be done in February. Okay. Some of it isn't necessarily in my control, but I have been procrastinating. And she said to me, "What is going on? What is going on with you? Why? What are you afraid of?" And I had to really think about it. And I said, "I don't know that I want to be flying all over." She said, "This is going to catapult your career to the next level," right? I said, "Well, that's the theory." She said, "No, it will." And I said, "I don't know that I want to be working as hard as all these professional speakers I see." I still look at Mel Robbins, right? Mm-hmm. So look at Mel Robbins. She puts out a ton of content. She is everywhere all the time, works super hard. Absolutely. And I'm like, I don't want to work. I don't know if I want to work that hard. I don't know if I want to get on a plane every other week, because I was on a plane every other week or every week in a former life, and it was miserable. And I was miserable. Now, this is not when I was with Marriott, for those of you who know me. When I was with Marriott, I loved my job. So this is not when I was with Marriott. This was another job where I was on a plane every week. So my point is, what was holding me back was I don't really want the Mel Robbins level of success. Mm-hmm. I don't. Right. I don't. And that's very hard for someone to admit, for me to admit. I think that's very hard for people to admit. Right. So I went on another tangent.
But I think that's important, right? That's very clear to you, because it is in your control what speaking gigs you take. How far are you willing to travel? How often do you want to travel? You get to set those parameters, and then you get to pick.
But it wasn't clear to me. Correct. It is now. And why was I holding myself? This is what she said. She said, "You're not working for a toxic boss anymore. You're not working for a lunatic anymore. This is you. This is you and only you. And you get to decide, right? You get to decide, blah, 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 blah." So, and it was I equated Mel Robbins' level of success with an incredibly unpleasant workload. And I get to decide how hard I work. You get to decide how hard you work. And the podsters get to decide how hard they work. Because you're the boss of you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the tall poppy, instead of tearing down the tall poppy didn't get to relax as much as the other poppies. Maybe the tall poppy has amazing anxiety and they keep striving and striving and striving and they can't get out of their own way. And that's why they're a tall poppy. Maybe the tall poppy had a father who things were never good enough for them, or a mother, or whoever. Maybe the tall poppy has a spouse who's like, you better not come home unless you can do blah, 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 blah. You don't know what's driving the tall poppy.
That's right. You have no idea what a day in the life is like for that person. And I also want to say that goes in the reverse, because I do think that it's probably easy to be the tall poppy and to feel victimized by someone who is trying to cut you down, and to be, of course, angry and resentful at that. Or maybe you're not. Maybe if you're a tall poppy, you're like, yeah, whatever. But I always find that when somebody is acting in that sort of way, a bully, or it is technically bullying, right? It's sophisticated bullying, that you have to say to yourself, what is driving this person to use their energy to treat someone else in this way? And I like that, because I think when you can look at it and say, oh, this person has these limitations holding them back, whether they're not real limitations and they're just, fabricating them in their mind, or they need support, or they are fearful and they just don't have what it takes at that moment to make the next step. That then you can detach from it, because you can say, oh, I see, this isn't my problem. It's not about me. It's really about this other person and whatever kind of internal struggle that they're having.
Totally. Absolutely. Totally agree. Totally. It's about them. It's rarely about the person that's being targeted. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, do you have any personal experience with tall poppy syndrome?
With tall poppy syndrome, I have to say, not that I could. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Right? This falls under the umbrella of a number of things. And I think I've probably spoken about it here before, but when I first moved to Boston, I was 22 or 23, and I was opening a hair salon in the financial district. And the landlord, first of all, he's a creepy, we won't even go down this road.
Creepy.
And he would say things to me like, other people have hair salons here and they didn't do so well. Oh, so are you afraid that I'm going to be successful here? How is that going to feel? I just signed a lease. I mean, don't you want me to be successful? You want me to sign my lease?
Yep.
So I had that experience. I mean, I'm sure I could find a bajillion micro tall poppy moments with my mother that I love to bring up. Trying to think of one. I remember when I was getting married, I was engaged to get married the first time, and she said to me, well, you're going to get divorced. How's that? And I remember when I was considering getting divorced, I kept thinking about the state. And then I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to stay like this because...
Right, just to prove my mother wrong. Right.
Right, exactly. So
by the way, I had a physical reaction when you said that, when you just shared that story. My heart rate increased and I had a physical reaction.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, you know what? We're entitled to think whatever we want in the privacy of our own mind, but some things you just shouldn't say out loud.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
Our opinion.
Yep. Yeah. And the more, so you gave those examples, right? That just supported that it's that they want what you have. So that landlord wanted a successful business where, or whatever the case. And then your mother's a whole nother story.
That's right.
She wanted a happy marriage. She didn't have that. Right. So I would assume, I don't know that to be true. Yeah. And you want to know the other thing that's interesting? So I only had one experience with it, and it was many, many years ago, and I was going for a job that was a big stretch, big stretch. And I remember somebody very close to me said, I hope she doesn't think that I was going to leave the company. And she said, I hope she doesn't think she's going to come back at that level. And it was just a really snarky thing to say. And I remember I just laughed. I'm like, okay, of course she said that because I'm going for it. It's
Right.
it's always jealousy and envy that you had the guts to go for it, that you had the guts to try to open your own salon and build your own business. It really comes down to jealousy. How do you recommend people? I have some ideas, but I want to ask you first. What do you think's one or two things the podsters can do to deal with when somebody's cutting them down?
Right. So I think I'm going to go with the things that I already said. So if you are the person who is being attacked, right, by someone's jealousy, I would really try that to say, what is triggering this person to behave this way? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be this jealous, envious attacker, right? So what is it about that person? And see if that doesn't help you detach and say, you know what, this isn't my problem. And I would say for the other person, maybe write down, why do you find yourself pining for what this other person has? What do you think is a realistic list of pros and cons of where that person is? And is that really what you want?
Totally agree. I love it. The only thing I would add is a couple of little kind of,
sure,
this isn't necessarily tactical. It's remember that the tall poppy gets the most sun, right?
Right.
The only way you're going to be the tall poppy is if you raise your hand and go stretch to meet the sun.
Right.
And the tall poppy shows the other poppies what's possible. So if all the poppies grow together, they're always going to be at one level, and a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
So if by you going for it, you're showing others what's possible. And I would suggest it's your duty to do that and to show other people, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your younger coworkers, maybe it's your colleagues, but to show them that I'm going to go for it because it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Boom.
I like it.
All right.
What do we want to tell the podsters? Anything?
Well, I think we want to tell them that June 15th, we have a LinkedIn Live. So stay tuned for that. That's our anniversary show.
Absolutely.
I think we want to tell them that we are now in 37 countries.
37.
By the way, if you are from Australia and you're more familiar with tall poppy syndrome, shoot us a note. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that because that's where it originated. In New Zealand, Australia and New Zealand.
Right.
Not where it originated. That's where it gained momentum. I think by the time the podsters hear this, your personal branding workshop will be OVER. Is that correct?
It could be, right? June 6th is the date of that, or was the date of that, if we're past June 6th.
Yeah, I think we don't. I think it gets posted later. I think.
Okay. There will be another. There will
be another. So keep the reviews coming. We have a lot of new podsters. The more reviews we get, the more we come up in SEO searches. And it's really helping because we're coming up high these days. Mm-hmm. So thanks, podsters. And as always, reach out to us if you have any topics that you want us to talk about, particularly for the LinkedIn Live. We're looking for hot topics, people. Hot topics.
Hot topics.
And with that, do you want to do the peace out, Beth?
All right. Peace out, podsters.